My name is Lena. I'm 27 years old. When people ask about my childhood, I tell them it was quiet and peaceful. I grew up in a small town where everybody knew each other. We lived in a modest house with white walls, a red roof, and a tiny garden out front. My mother, Grace, loved to grow yellow roses. Every summer, the whole street could smell them. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But my story has a secret. Grace was a gentle woman. She had soft hands and a warm voice. Every morning she packed my lunch and braided my hair. At night she read bedtime stories and kissed me on the forehead. She always made me feel safe. She called me her little star. I loved her with all my heart. To me, she was my real mother. There was never a reason to think otherwise. My father, Martin, was different. He wasn't unkind, but he was quiet and distant. He came home late from work and spent most evenings in front of the TV. He didn't smile much. He didn't ask me about school or come to my class shows. When I got sick, it was always Grace who stayed by my side. Martin was there, but he never really felt close. Before we go on, tell me, where in the world are you listening from? I love hearing from you. Now, let's go back to the story. One Saturday morning when I was around 9 years old, I went looking for my old school papers. I opened the drawer under my mother's bed. Inside I found a small wooden box. It had photos, letters, and some old baby clothes. One picture caught my eye. It showed a young woman I didn't recognize. She had dark hair and strong eyes. In her arms was a baby who looked exactly like me. My heart felt strange. I ran downstairs with the photo. "Mom," I said, "who is this?" Grace looked at the picture and froze for a moment. Then she smiled gently. "Oh, her. She was a friend. That baby just looks like you, doesn't it?" she said. I laughed and nodded. I was too young to ask more questions. But that moment stayed in my heart for years. Sometimes I looked in the mirror and wondered why I didn't look like my parents. My skin was a little darker. My eyes were almond-shaped. People at school sometimes asked, "Where are you really from?" I never had an answer. Grace always told me, "You're ours, Lena. That's all that matters." And I believed her. Because I wanted to. As I got older, the distance between Martin and me grew stronger. He missed my school graduation. He forgot my birthday once. Grace always tried to make up for it, buying extra gifts or baking my favorite cake. I never told her how much it hurt when he didn't show up. I didn't want to make her sad. But I felt the difference. Something was missing. When I turned 16, everything changed. One night, I came home from school early. I heard voices in the kitchen. Grace and Martin were talking quietly. Their voices were serious. I stayed still near the stairs, listening. "She's old enough now," Martin said. "We should tell her." "No," Grace replied, her voice soft but firm. "Not yet. She still sees me as her real mother. She has the right to know." My heart started to beat faster. I ran up to my room and closed the door. My hands were shaking. What were they hiding from me? I couldn't sleep that night. The next morning, I waited until Grace was alone. I sat across from her at the kitchen table. "Mom," I said slowly, "is there something I should know about my past?" She looked at me with wide eyes. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she stood up and walked over to the window. Her shoulders were shaking. Finally she turned around and sat beside me. "Lena," she said, holding my hand, "I didn't give birth to you. The room went silent. My ears were ringing. I felt like the floor disappeared under me. I stared at her, trying to understand her words. "You've what?" "I adopted you," she said softly. "You were just a baby. Your birth mother, she couldn't keep you. So we took you in." My chest tightened. I stood up and stepped back. My hands were cold. "So I'm not really your daughter?" I whispered. "No, Lena. You're my daughter. In every way that matters. I chose you. I raised you. I loved you from the first moment I saw you. But you lied to me. I wanted to protect you." I ran to my room and closed the door. My head was spinning. Everything I believed about my life. It felt like a lie. Who was I really? Who was the woman in the photo? Why didn't they tell me before? That night I cried myself to sleep. The next morning I didn't come down for breakfast. I stayed in my room staring at the photo I had found years ago. Now I knew. That woman holding the baby, that was my real mother. Not Grace. Not the woman who raised me, loved me, protected me. My real mother was a stranger. And I didn't even know her name. Grace knocked gently on my door. "Lena, can we talk?" she asked. "I don't want to talk," I said. She stood outside for a few seconds, then walked away. I felt both sad and angry. I didn't know what to do with these feelings. I loved Grace. But now I didn't trust her. Why did she hide the truth for so long? For days I didn't speak much at home. Martin acted like nothing had changed. He barely looked at me. Grace tried to be normal, cooking dinner and asking if I needed anything. But I couldn't forget her words. "I didn't give birth to you." One evening I asked her the question that had been burning inside me. "Do you know who my real mother is?" Grace sat down and nodded slowly. "Her name was Julia," she said. "She was only 19 when she had you. She was alone, scared, and didn't have anyone to help her." "Where is she now?" I asked. "I don't know," she replied. "After the adoption, she disappeared. We never heard from her again." "Did she want me?" I whispered. Grace looked down. "She did. But she couldn't care for you. She didn't want to give you away. But she had no choice." My chest ached. I thought of a young girl holding a baby, crying as she let her go. I imagined her walking out of a hospital with empty arms. Did she still think about me? Did she wonder where I was? Over time, my anger began to soften. I started to look at Grace differently. She wasn't perfect, but she gave me love, a home, and a life. She was there for every scraped knee, every school concert, every tear I cried. One night I sat beside her on the couch. She looked tired. "Why didn't you tell me when I was younger?" I asked. "I was afraid," she said. "Afraid that you'd stop loving me. Afraid that you'd feel lost." I did feel lost. "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "And I'm sorry." I looked at her hands. They were the same hands that held mine when I was sick. The same hands that tied my shoelaces and packed my school bag. I remembered every time she stood up for me, every time she stayed up at night when I had a fever. "I was angry," I said softly. "But I still love you." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You will always be my daughter, Lena. No matter what." That night I cried again. But not out of pain. I cried because I realized something important. Family isn't only about blood. It's about love, care, and choice. Grace had chosen me even when she didn't have to. Still, there was a hole inside me. A part of me that wanted to know more. About Julia. About where I came from. I wanted to understand who I was. All of me. So I made a decision. I went to the town hall and asked about my birth records. At first, they didn't want to share the information. But after filling out forms and waiting for weeks, they gave me something. A thin file. Inside was a name, Julia Reyes. Age 19. No contact address. It wasn't much. But it was a start. I came home and showed Grace the file. She looked nervous, but she didn't stop me. "Are you going to look for her?" she asked. "I think I need to." Grace nodded. "Whatever you decide, I'll be here." For the first time in weeks, I hugged her. It felt warm and safe, just like when I was little. That night, I wrote Julia's name in my journal over and over again. Julia Reyes. Julia Reyes. Julia, my birth mother. Who was she now? Was she married? Did she have other children? Did she remember me? I didn't know. But I was ready to find out. The next few days were quiet. I went to work, came home, and sat with the file again and again. It only had one name, Julia Reyes. No phone number. No email. No address. Just a name and an old birth date. I didn't know where to start. I searched online, but there were many people with that name. Some were too young. Some were too old. Some lived in other countries. None of them felt right. I felt frustrated. I closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling. Grace came into the room and sat beside me. "How's the search going?" she asked. "I don't know where to look. It feels impossible," I said. She placed her hand on mine. "Maybe start with the hospital. The one where you were born." I hadn't thought of that. The next morning, I visited the hospital. I walked through the front doors with shaky hands. I felt nervous, like I didn't belong there. At the information desk, I asked if I could see the birth records from 27 years ago. The woman behind the desk looked surprised. "That's a long time ago," she said. "We keep some old records, but only certain ones." She told me to wait. 20 minutes later, she came back with a thin folder. "There's very little here," she said, handing it to me. Instead, I found one more clue. Julia had written a short note. Just a few lines. "To whoever raises my daughter, please love her. She deserves everything good in life. I am sorry. I had no choice." I pressed the paper to my chest. My eyes filled with tears. Julia had loved me. She hadn't just given me away and forgotten me. She had written a note. A wish. A prayer. She had tried to leave a piece of her heart with me. When I got home, I showed the note to Grace. She read it in silence. Then she looked up at me and said, "She loved you, Lena. You were not unwanted. You were just born at the wrong time." Her words touched something deep inside me. Later that night, I looked at the name again, Julia Reyes. I wrote it in my notebook. Below it I wrote, "Find her." Not to blame her. Not to be angry. Just to know who she was. And who I was too. I didn't need her to be my mother. I already had one. But I needed to see her even just once. The next week I took some time off work. I wanted to focus on the search. I called local offices, wrote emails to adoption agencies, and even posted on a forum for family searches. I didn't know what I would find. But something inside me kept pushing forward. One afternoon I received an email. It was from a woman named Lena. She worked at a small community center 2 hours from my town. Hello, Lena, it said. I saw your message. There is a Julia Reyes who comes here sometimes. She volunteers with children. She told me once that she gave up a baby many years ago. I don't know if it's the same person, but I thought of you right away. I stared at the screen for a long time. My heart beat fast. Could this really be her? I called Elena immediately. She was kind and patient. She's very private, Elena said. But she's a good woman. Would you like me to tell her you're looking for her? I hesitated. Yes, I said. But please be gentle. I don't want to hurt her. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed with 100 questions in my mind. Would Julia want to see me? Would she be afraid? Would she feel shame or guilt? What if she didn't remember me at all? 2 days later I got another email. Julia wants to meet you. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't know whether to smile or cry. After all these years, I would finally see the woman who gave me life. The meeting was set for the weekend. Grace offered to come with me, but I said no. This was something I had to do on my own. He understood. She hugged me at the door. I'm proud of you, she whispered. The drive to the community center felt long. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I kept practicing what to say. Hello, I'm Lena. Thank you for giving me life. I don't hate you. But my mind felt full and empty at the same time. When I arrived, Elena met me outside and smiled. She's inside, she said. She's nervous too. I walked in and saw her sitting near the window. She looked older than the photo, of course, but her eyes were the same. Deep, soft, and a little sad. She stood up when she saw me. Lena, she asked. I nodded. For a moment we just stared at each other. Then she opened her arms. I stepped forward and she held me. Her hug was quiet, warm, and full of emotion. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stood there and felt her arms around me. I've thought about this day for years, she said softly. But I didn't know if it would ever come. I had to find you, I said. Not to judge you. I just needed to know who you were. We sat down and talked for hours. She told me about her life, how scared she was at 19, how alone she felt. How she loved me even before I was born. And how giving me away was the hardest thing she had ever done. I told her about Grace. About the love I had received. About my doubts and questions. About the photo, the silence, and the moment I found the truth. She gave me everything, I said. But you gave me life. Julia held my hand and cried. I'm sorry, she said. But I'm also thankful that you had a good life. I did, I said. And now I know why. After that first meeting, I visited Julia again the next weekend. This time she brought photos. Old ones from her teenage years, some with her parents and a few of me as a baby. She told me stories about the hospital the day I was born and how hard it was to let me go. She didn't cry when she spoke. She smiled gently as if the memories still lived in her heart. I used to dream about you, she said. I used to imagine your first day of school, your birthday parties, your first steps. But I never thought I'd see you again. Her words made my throat tight. I looked at her and whispered, You didn't lose me completely. I found you. Julia didn't ask to be my mother again. She didn't try to take Grace's place. Instead, she asked simple things. How I liked my coffee, what my job was like, what books I liked to read. It was like starting from the beginning, slowly, carefully. Back at home, Grace waited quietly. She never pressured me. She never asked for details. But one night I sat beside her on the couch and showed her a photo of Julia holding me as a baby. Grace stared at it for a while. Then she smiled. "You looked happy," she said. "And now I see where your eyes come from." "She's kind," I said. "But she knows you're my mom." Grace put her hand over mine. "You can have space in your heart for both of us, Lena. I never wanted to keep her away from you. I just wanted to keep you safe. I know that now." Weeks passed. I started visiting Julia more often. Sometimes we took walks in the park. Sometimes we just talked over tea. One Sunday she invited me to meet her sister, my birth aunt. She welcomed me with open arms. "I always hoped we'd meet you one day," she said. "You were never forgotten." Hearing that filled a small hole in my heart. I hadn't realized how much I needed to feel connected to where I came from. Not just to Grace, who raised me with so much love, but also to Julia, who brought me into the world with hope and sorrow mixed together. One day I had an idea. I invited Julia to my house for dinner. And I also invited Grace. I was nervous all day. What if it was too strange? What if it was uncomfortable? But when the doorbell rang and both women stood in my home, something beautiful happened. Grace opened the door and smiled. "Julia," she said. "Grace," Julia replied. They hugged. It was soft, brief, but full of respect. That evening we all ate together. We talked. We laughed a little. Julia thanked Grace for raising me with so much love. Grace thanked Julia for trusting her with that gift. And I sat there in the middle of the two women who made me who I am. After dinner, Julia said goodbye and hugged me tightly. "You're strong," she whispered. "I'm proud of you." Later that night, Grace hugged me too. "No matter where you came from, you will always be my daughter." I smiled and wiped a small tear. "I know. And I'm lucky. I have two mothers now. One who gave me life, and one who gave me love." After that evening, something in me changed. I felt lighter. Like a missing piece had finally been found. For years, I had carried quiet questions in my heart. Now I had answers. I had peace. Julia and Grace didn't become best friends. They didn't call each other or meet often. But there was respect between them. Grace never spoke badly about Julia. And Julia never tried to take Grace's place. They both loved me in their own way. And that was enough. One Sunday morning, I sat with Grace in the garden. She was cutting dead flowers and humming an old song. I watched her hands move gently through the roses. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked quietly. She looked up at me. "Regret what, sweetheart?" "Taking me in. Adopting me." She smiled. "Not even for 1 second." I felt tears in my eyes. "Even when I was angry?" "You had the right to be. I kept the truth too long. But you've always been my daughter. That never changed." I leaned my head on her shoulder. "Thank you for choosing me. You didn't come from me, Lena. But you grew in my heart." Those words stayed with me for a long time. Later that week, I visited Julia again. She had found a small photo album and gave it to me. "This is for you," she said. "There's not much. But these are all I have from when you were born." I opened the album slowly. There were photos of her at the hospital. Some baby clothes. A bracelet with my birth name on it. Baby girl Reyes. I touched the page softly. "Why did you name me Lena?" I asked her. She smiled. "I didn't. That was Grace's choice. But did I have a name when I was born? She nodded. I called you Marisol. It means sun and sea. I thought it was beautiful. For a moment I felt like I had two names. Two beginnings. Two lives. But I didn't feel confused. I felt full. Complete. I placed my hand on hers. Lena or Marisol? I'm still me. Julia looked at me and said, yes, you are. And you're everything I hoped you would be. That night I wrote in my journal. I come from two women. One gave me breath. The other gave me life. I carry them both inside me.